Hey, Sassy Stuff. I'm Emma,
And I'm Bailey.
and this is The Road to Atlanta. Let's get to it.
Emma, we're getting closer to college football playoffs. Can you believe it?
I'm so excited. This season has been amazing to begin with all the new changes and developments between new teams coming in, between the division lines, between the East and the West breaking down, and the top two teams getting into the championship. And we're so close to playoffs. We're 3 weeks away from rivalry weekend, and then we have the championships, and then I think 2 weeks till the playoffs. So it's gone very fast, but we have, 3 more months left? So football's not going anywhere yet.
Basically, especially with this whole new entire layout. I think that's the one thing none of us could have predicted coming into this entire season. Take out the SEC, but look at college football as a whole. This entire year has been truly crazy. I don't think we've ever seen a season like this full of so many different losses, ups and downs, people changing positions in the AP polls like it's freaking water. And the last like even 10 years, it's kind of crazy. But with this whole new college football playoff format, this is a little insane. I'm excited to see, especially as we're getting towards this. We're seeing a lot of SEC teams that are creeping into this top 12, but these top 5 spots are pretty plush when you look at it from a true strategy of maintaining stamina and keeping these teams ready in prime position to actually get the best foot forward in these playoffs.
We look at what could happen this next upcoming weekend with the Georgia-Tennessee game. Based on the results of that, if Georgia does beat Tennessee and we have a couple other games shake the right way, we could have an 8-way tie for who will actually be able to go to the SEC championship, which is what we're really looking at here. We're like, well, who's going to go? So if you had to pick off the top of your head right now, who are you picking?
You know what? I didn't believe it. So I was on campus at Auburn the first weekend that college football started, and I had interviewed somebody, asked them a question of like, who do you think is going to the SEC championship? And one guy went Tennessee. I was like, well, that's a hot take. And my gosh, I have been proven incorrect 1,000%. I think that we are going to see Tennessee and what I'm assuming is going to be Texas. I mean, I know Texas A&M has had a really strong season. I also just think, though, too, we're looking at this from a very big picture. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because we've been watching Texas, Georgia, and Alabama so heavily just from seeing these new landscapes that are happening in their programs. But I just don't see Texas A&M as a team that really should be in this SEC championship title playoff game. I mean, Texas and Georgia, you look at them and those teams have had such strong schedules they've had to overcome that I'm hoping we'll see them, but as the standings currently are, it's looking like Tennessee and Texas A&M might be our top two.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. My thing with Texas, the Longhorns, is that if they don't win against Texas A&M, then who have they really played this year? I mean, we saw we see what Michigan is now, and so that's not a great win. They lost to Georgia, so that was a ranked loss. My worry for Texas is if you lose 2 games this season, you become 10-2, like some of these other teams, your strength of schedule might not get you in the playoffs. So for Texas, I think every single game is a must win. So we're going to see what happens there, but I'm kind of worried about their chances of getting in the playoffs if they can't win out this season.
I mean, we are seeing right now, LSU has dropped. Alabama is, I mean, they just kind of hold their fingers crossed like this and say a prayer, and sometimes they end up getting in somehow. So overall, it's looking okay for the Crimson Tide. Tennessee sitting at number 7, I believe, right now, and Georgia now dropping back so far. What is your brain? If you're looking at these SEC teams that are trying to vie for these college football playoff spots, who do you think we're actually going to see representing this conference?
So right now, our top 8, who all have opportunities as the record stands now to get into the SEC championship. And if you get into the SEC championship, you win that game. It doesn't matter what your record is outside of the SEC. That top slot right now is Tennessee. Then we get Texas A&M, Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, Missouri, and then LSU is still in the hunt because there are only 2 losses in conference play. So if all of these teams go to 2 losses in conference play, then you go to the head-to-head. So we go to the head-to-head among tied teams. And then we have to do record versus common opponents among tied teams. So again, it's all 8 of these. all of them have kind of beaten each other, as we've seen all year. It doesn't really matter who you play and how great we think they are. You can lose any given week. I picked Georgia at least to beat Ole Miss. A lot of people are on the Ole Miss train, but I wasn't fully on Lane Kiffin, and now I'm like, okay, Lane Kiffin knows what he's doing. But not everybody expected that. And we've had a couple other crazy games. A lot of people picked Tennessee to beat Alabama, but if Alabama won, I think anybody could have really won that game. So that really doesn't work out. And then we have record against highest place opponents among tied teams. They're all kind of the same again. So we have to go to that fourth tiebreaker, which is combined winning percentage of all conference opponents. And I did read up if that happens. As of right now, you would have Alabama and LSU in that game. And if LSU was able to win, they could go in, losing 3 games this season, but just 2 games in conference play. So it's very interesting to see that. If I had to look at it right now, for all of the playoffs, I would say we're going to get 4 teams in. Because I think after that, they're going to be like, well, why not another Big Ten team? Why not an ACC team? I think 4 is what we're going to get this year with how competitive it has been across the board. If Tennessee beats Georgia, they're in. They're in the playoffs. It doesn't matter what else happens their season. I think they're in. Texas A&M, if they beat Texas, they're in the playoffs. Texas, if they lose to Texas A&M, I don't think are in the playoffs. So that is a must-win game, in my opinion, for Texas. Georgia has to win this weekend against Tennessee. If they do not win, they're out of playoff contentions. Forget about the SEC championship for a moment. Kirby Smart will not be there. Ole Miss, they just have to win out. They have 2 games left, 2. So, and I think they are very winnable games. You don't want to ever say that to your players because then they don't try as hard. But I think they're incredibly winnable games. So I think Ole Miss is in the playoffs. I don't think they need to go to the SEC championship by any means to secure their spot. Alabama too. They really rely to get to the SEC championship at least on other teams to win for them or lose for them. Like Georgia winning against Tennessee would really help Alabama's SEC championship hopes. Missouri, technically, they're in it. I do not think they will touch the playoffs whatsoever, but as the record stands, they're in it. And LSU, I mean, they need chaos scenario. And I don't think I think if they don't win the SEC championship, if they somehow get in there, that's very unlikely, but it could happen. If they don't win the SEC championship, no way they're getting in the playoffs. So from right now, I'm putting Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss, and Alabama as the 4 teams from the SEC to go to the playoffs. And like you said, I think we're going to see Tennessee and Texas in the SEC championship from what I've seen right now. We'll have to see after the Tennessee-Georgia game.
And that's the interesting part, though, is that we're not out of the woods yet. Just because we're entering into week 12 does not mean the season's over. I think, frankly, we're in even the thick of it now because these games matter more than ever. Like you said, rivalry week is coming. Those games can go either way. It really doesn't matter the rankings at that point because those ties and that competitive spirit run so deep. And especially in a conference like the SEC, these games mean so much more than just your average run-of-the-mill football game that you have. So anything is possible. And let's be honest, a lot of these teams are secretly kind of hoping to be like, hey, let me mess up so-and-so's chances of actually getting in here. And let's just shake it up even more because why not, you know? I know Auburn does. God love them. Good.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's all they're going to play for. There's like, I want to win the Iron Bowl. I want to win the Iron Bowl. They win the Iron Bowl. I don't think Alabama's going to the playoffs. But no, you're really looking at teams who control their own destiny. So we're looking at the Texases, Texas A&M, and Tennessee. If they win out, they're in. That's just it. But one of these teams is going to drop the game. Obviously, between Texas and Texas A&M, I think whoever wins that game is going to the SEC championship. And then we're going to see what happens with Georgia and Tennessee. That's going to really shake things up. If Tennessee wins and then they continue winning, I mean, they got to play Vanderbilt. So let's not speak too quickly. But if they beat Georgia, I think their odds of getting into that SEC championship game is pretty high. They have a very winnable season after that, even though Vandy does trip people up. But I think we're going to look at a Texas A&M or Texas playing Tennessee in that SEC championship game. Obviously, the winner from that gets that bye week.
And we have some crucial leaders, though, too, that are leading all these different SEC teams right now. I mean, like you're saying, Vandy has been tripping people up all season, and Diego Pavia is really, he's in it, and he's proven himself to be such a consistently dedicated but also very respected leader from his teammates. And that translates over. I mean, regardless, Tennessee Vandy, that's still a rivalry at some point. So you don't know how it's really going to shape out and take effect. But let's kind of talk about the two as we're heading in. Like you're saying, Georgia Tennessee is very, very crucial from how we're looking at the actual CFP effects on where these teams are going to be sitting as they're trying to get into those 12 spots. But all that to be said, though, let's kind of talk about some of these different crucial players that are a part of these teams. I mean, I know that you can say his name better than anybody else in this entire team over here at SEC Staff.
There you
go, girl. Let's roll. I love it. That is truly an art form, the fact that you can say that so beautifully. But he has continuously been a really consistent quarterback for this team, but also been a really consistent leader. You're watching Tennessee overall. Yes, of course, there's been some different flubs that each team has had this year. But for the most part, though, he's been really dynamic. And watching Carson Beck coming off of last week and going into this game here coming up shortly, he's definitely in a rockier situation to see that Georgia's not sitting exactly in the same way we once thought they were going to be able to. And like you're saying, I think Georgia might be getting themselves out of the playoffs, period.
Absolutely. And looking at that game now, if you go back and watch our predictor, we didn't have the news that we do now. Nico Iamaleava is actually on concussion protocol at the moment. So we don't know if he's going to play. And being in Athens, so Georgia has a home field advantage, and now Nico maybe not suiting up to take the fields. I might be leaning more towards Georgia now with who's going to win that game. We don't know the backup quarterback and how they would perform, especially in a big moment with playoffs on the line and the SEC championship title game on the line. Because I think whoever is in that SEC championship game who loses, except for maybe LSU, will get the 5th spot in the playoffs. So this is going to be a very interesting game if he plays and if he doesn't play. And so I'm sitting and watching everything I can to see, is he going to play or is he not going to play? It's probably going to be a game time decision, but right now it's kind of looking doubtful. And if he doesn't play, he's not going to be able to be the game changer that he has been for this team. So that is really going to shake up this list for sure.
It's really interesting to watch how leadership on these different teams is so crucial and imperative to watching consistency start to form. And I think that's the one thing we really haven't seen this entire season are teams that are winning in this consistent manner that of what we have assumed the SEC to be for the longest time. It's definitely something to look at for sure. Now, I kind of want to take a break from the whole team side of this. Let me ask you a question real fast about these fans that we've gotten to meet some really amazing people along the way this entire season who are dedicated college football fans. What has been the general consensus and reaction that you've experienced when talking with SEC fans about this whole new playoff structure?
Well, I think especially because there are 12 spots, and theoretically, I think you could technically have a conference get 6 or 7 teams in there. Everyone's like, well, the SEC is obviously the best conference. We're eating each other alive out here. We're beating each other up. And you've seen through the year with Texas playing Michigan, they destroyed the Big Ten. You saw Georgia beat up on Clemson. So we destroyed the ACC, and it's like, why not put more of our teams in there? We're only going to get 4. And I mean, like, let's not get greedy because we got to put Notre Dame in there and they don't have a conference. But I would say the max the SEC gets this year is 5, but I feel very confident that we will have 4 teams in there.
I don't disagree with you. And I think if anything, what this whole entire playoff experience is going to show us is that strength of schedule it really, these rankings are definitely a little bit more skewed and they don't always take that into as much consideration. So I think we're going to see a higher demand for SEC next year, especially in these playoffs as we navigate this first year. Well, all that to be said, Emma, we've got a lot of watching to do, not only in our own conference attention, but we've got a whole set of playoffs to get ready for. So guys, be sure to tune in with us. Next week, we're going to be talking about this, checking in weekly as we're getting closer and closer to these college football games. Like, subscribe to our channel, and also be sure to connect with us on TikTok and Instagram at Sassy Stuff Show to keep up with the latest and greatest of all things SEC stuff.